I'm not trained for this.
I don't have time.
I don't want to work with them.
I don't know how to deal with this situation.
So what can teachers do when they don't know how to deal with the situation?
So first of all, it's normal to have these different thoughts and feelings. And the good news is that teachers, they don't have to work on their own. They don't have to work like lonesome player, like in common in schools for years. And in an inclusive school system, the perspective, it changes. There are diverse learning groups and there are diverse needs of all students. So for one person, it would be overwhelming to identify and to overcome all the barriers and to respond to all diverse needs from all the students. And it doesn't matter if you're a young teacher or if you have years of experience, there will be always some new challenges and new situations where you're not able to deal on your own with. So there is a certain need for support, there's a need for a team, and especially when you have a multidisciplinary team, it's even better. So teachers, they need to give up the isolation, because when they are not on their own in the classroom or outside the classroom, they can learn and then they find solutions, new solutions for the situation, because they have other perspective, other educators, other experts they can ask for. But we know from research there are so many opportunities for collaboration in school, but most teachers, they don't know about really. So the first thing is when you're not fine and with a situation and you have a problem with your class or with a child, you need to look for a team to solve this problem. You need a team. So you can ask your colleagues and you can ask maybe your team teaching partner, and you can ask for professionals which are already in school, and you can ask your principal, is there somebody else who can help me with my special situation? And if it's not in school, you can ask which are the institutions outside who can help me. Most countries, they established a quite big support system, so you just have to ask for it for first step. And I think the most important point is that you have to know it's a competence to ask for advice. You might find it not easy, and we know that working in multidisciplinary teams can be difficult. So can you tell me why it is so difficult to work in a multidisciplinary team?
Well, it's true that sometimes working in a multidisciplinary team can be challenging, both at an individual as well as a team level. This is probably because the first thought that comes into our mind when we are facing a difficult situation is to believe that we are the sole responsible to solve it, and that it takes less time and it's maybe less messy to work on our own than to go ask for questions. So some of the most common challenges at the individual level are due to the fact that we see our profession as being isolated, self-contained. So although we know that there's another set of skills needed for us to help the students, we find it difficult to trust other professionals. Then another challenge is to see others' opinions and input as being based on hierarchy, on a certain level of qualification. So we can even see ourselves or others as being more or less entitled to contribute to the common goals. And then there's also the human ego, that blocks us from seeing what a team can bring together in order to create the common good. And as I said, there are also challenges at the team level, because it's very challenging sometimes to find the right resources or enough resources, the right professionals at the right time to help us overcome the challenges we have in the classroom. There are also challenges when we work across institutions, and without having proper guidelines proper procedures, we can find it difficult to agree on some plans and also communicate important information.
But why is it worth it?
Well, it's important that it's truly worth it, and there are as well benefits at an individual as well as a team level. As an individual, we might see that we are not lone warriors. So we broaden our perspective, we bring in new knowledge, and we actually are able to help our students, which gives us a sense of accomplishment for our work. Also, we are strengthening our communication skills, and that is going to help us become more empathic and more capable to and willing to adopt new perspectives. So that's only going to help us build trustful networks, and it's also going to help us overcome the thought and the mindset that everyone should know everything and should deal with everything, which is not the case. So we have to change that and become more clear about our roles and our responsibilities. And of course, as a team, the benefits might be that when we exchange information in a multidisciplinary team, we actually are able to know the students better and do better justice to them. So also to commit to having more inclusive classrooms and more inclusive schools. And when we build together solutions to the challenges, we learn with and from each other. And in this way, we strengthen our professional actions, and we are also capable to decrease our workload, hopefully.
Who's part of a multidisciplinary team?
Traditionally, multidisciplinary teams would have been seen as outside of the educational setting. Nowadays, we're more looking at the grassroots approach and at the strengths of the people on the ground working with the children and the families. Our sector has introduced an inclusion coordinator, being trained outside the setting and bringing the knowledge back into the education system to help support the children's and families' voice within the educational setting. And much more recently, even up to this year, the children's voices are being heard a lot more within inclusive practices and being empowered to be active citizens within inclusion. I've seen as young as 3 and 4 being able to be mindful of inclusion. I was reading a story about a child about the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf, and I said to the children at the end of the story, I wonder why that wolf was so angry. And one of the children answered, I could be his friend. So he knew that under anger there could be a need for support or a need for help, which could ripple out into all the other children's houses and communities. We also have an access and inclusion model. This is an outside mentor coming in to support the educators and the families with inclusion and bringing the team together and promoting effective communication and problem solving and decision making with the families to include the children within the classroom. Sometimes it could be additional equipment or resources, or the classroom could be changed. There could be a quiet area added to the classroom, or sometimes more movement is needed. During COVID, there was a lack of outside time, so we needed to make sure that the children still received that movement within the classroom. So our mentor supported us to implement these strategies for children that needed additional support. However, we're still waiting on we still have a long assessments and waiting lists for children to be assessed with the diagnosis to get the support. But looking outside of our country into the Finnish country, Finland, work from a multidisciplinary team on the ground. They've amalgamated from the Department of Social Science to with the Department of Education, meaning that the kindergarten teachers and the social workers and the nursery nurses can all be in the one classroom together, supporting all the children, and the social workers then have skills specialised in working with families, and from an educational perspective, the children can be observed. We've come a long way in recent years, but we have a good foundation, but we still have a long way to go. Anka, can you tell us the difference between multi, inter and transdisciplinary teamwork?
Yeah. So as we already realized, there are many different understandings and constellations of teamwork in the different fields. And one broader understanding of multidisciplinary teamwork would be that it's situations where professionals from 2 or more different disciplines or professional groups come together to work together. And there's this distinction by Friend and Cook of 3 models of team interaction. And they differ concerning the intensity, the goals, and the context. So this is why it's useful to differentiate between multi, inter, and transdisciplinary teams. So when you look at the question, how do the team members understand themselves and how do they engage in lessons and activities in multidisciplinary teams, they value the contribution of each other, but they have their own lessons or activities independently. An example could be that a teacher seeks out for a professional outside school, like occupational therapists, and they share information. In interdisciplinary teams, they share the responsibility, but they still have the main responsibility for their own services. So for example, in the German or Austrian context, this is often the case in whole day schooling. We have the teachers mainly doing their lessons before the lunch break, and after the lunch break, educators engage children in various activities. So they relate to the same learning group, but they don't share lessons or activities. And then there's transdisciplinary teamwork, where there's really a shared responsibility and the members work together in lessons and activities and, like pointed out earlier, really learn from each other and with each other. An example could be, like you already mentioned, the Finnish educational early childhood education and care system, where different professionals like kindergarten teacher, childcare workers, and special education teachers, to name just a few, come together in a child-centered task. Another example, which is typical for inclusive teaching, is a co-teaching model, where teachers and specialists co-teach in a classroom. And one example from the Namibian school context is that an English teacher and a sign language teacher co-taught a classroom to better improve the understanding of English in this classroom. And you realize that with these different ways of understanding themselves as a team and engaging in lessons and activities, also the way of communicating and planning changes. So in multidisciplinary teams, they share information, but then they have their separate plans of working with the children and youth. And in interdisciplinary teams, they have meetings on a regular basis, and they put their goals together in one, for example, individual educational plan. And in transdisciplinary teams, they have this joint meeting and really engage in shared problem solving and developing the planning together. So to have this new ideas and perspective we already have mentioned. And one last aspect is the role of the families. So in multidisciplinary teams, families meet with each professional group separately. In interdisciplinary teams, there are joint meetings, but the professionals report for their own service separately, independent of each other. And in transdisciplinary teams, the families are really engaged in these meetings, having a more active role. So overall, this differentiation between inter and transdisciplinary teams helps to understand the complexity of multidisciplinary teamwork. To negotiate and also renegotiate tasks and responsibilities is part of the ongoing process. But knowing about these different types of team interaction helps to understand the intensity, the goals, and the context of the teamwork. And so overall, you can understand your team better and also know where to go from there. So it's a good starting point for developing teamwork.
Can you tell me about the multidisciplinary team? Who's working in it?
Yeah, traditionally they worked outside in the community and we invited them into the setting. However, we redesigned that now and we think it's better that we train our own early educational staff to go out into college and come back and bring in the advice from the tutors to help support the children and families' voice. Most importantly, the child's voice and hearing the child's basic needs and rights are heard. We also have a model called the Access Inclusion Model, and basically the staff team come together in effective communication and problem solving, because sometimes it's about the communication between the team rather than the children. So we've looked at the effectiveness of the team, and after that we'll invite the families in and they'll talk about their child and in a strengths-based approach, and we'll collaborate then with the mentor and use strategies, maybe behavioural strategies, or we can get resources for different types of funding, maybe to remodel the room or put a quiet area in, or maybe with COVID there was lack of movement and children didn't get as much time outside, so we had to we created a gross motor room inside the room so the children could move and stretch and jump whenever they needed to. But we had concerns then about a child that was spending a lot of time in the gross motor area. So, but I was saying his strengths, to sit, we need to be able to build up our core and our muscles. So eventually he did come to the table, and he was writing and drawing and doing fantastic pictures. So we need to be able to trust the child and be guided by the child. And all the documentation is then supported to when the child transitions to primary school.
So maybe can you tell me something how far the Finnish context differs from the Irish one?
Yeah, it's really interesting because they amalgamated the Department of Education and the Department of Social Affairs came together. So their earlier system is called Educare, and it's multidisciplinary by design, meaning that there's educators, but there's also social workers and nursery nurses within their classroom. Mm-hmm. So they have this multidisciplinary approach that the educators can observe the children and document their learning and document their progress. But the social workers are there then to work with the families as well and be able to possibly, if needed, find more supports within their community if an assessment of needs was done. However, when in Ireland, we're still waiting on with long waiting lists and long assessments of needs for children. So we have a good start, but I think we need possibly to build upon what we already have and try and possibly shorten our waiting lists for the benefits of all children.
So how can we make working in multidisciplinary teams better?
Well, it helps just to realize that you don't have to carry the responsibility of educating a group of learners on your shoulders alone, but you are surrounded with a library of knowledge who's made up of your colleagues. So looking at your colleagues as valuable source of information, it's so excited because you can learn new skills and things from your colleagues that will maybe take you a long time to find in books, or maybe never at all. So you are surrounded with this rich resources of information who are your colleagues, and also to see yourself as a source of information to your colleagues. But of course you can also be open-minded, so learn to listen to others and what they have to say, and respect their ideas, and feel confident and comfortable to also share your ideas, but also by creating a space where your colleagues can feel comfortable to share their ideas and to share problems that they are sharing. So just listen to other people already helps. Also to support one another. Ask for help when you feel that you're in a situation that you don't know what to do, but be also open to give help. So make time to provide your skills in helping your colleague, perhaps solving a problem. It also helps to know what is your role in a multidisciplinary group. What skills do you have that you're bringing to this group, and the value of the skills that you are bringing. So it helps to know exactly what part you are playing in the team. Then of course, be respectful of time. We are all so busy, and if you just respect and come to meetings and be prepared, and also make use of these meetings so that it's really resourceful, then it helps. And reliable. So within a multidisciplinary team, if you're a member, you are there because you have certain skills and expertise. So know that your team members depend on the work that you are doing in this team. So when you have a deadline, meet your deadline, because your colleague's work might depend on your work, and vice versa. So be respectful of that also. Within these schools, you can also create positive environment by trying to create a culture of teamwork where people are aligned with what is the purpose, and also what is the goal that we are working for. And sometimes we can also just pause so that we do a little bit of reflection. Where are we going with this, and what is needed for this team? Create a space where we just listen to each other, because listening to each other creates a relationship, and we feel inclusive if people are listening to us, and if we are acknowledged as individuals within a team. So create these spaces also in your team to find this bond between one another. Okay, Miriam, so how can we set up a situation for reflective practices in teamwork?
Well, first of all, teachers are reflective professionals because they reflect before the actions while they plan the activities. They reflect in the actions in their teaching practices, and they reflect after, thinking about the result and how to improve it. This is why they need time and space to reflect in order to generate new expertise. There are many examples of reflection practices in teamwork, and I will talk about 3 options which include the multidisciplinary perspective. The first one is reflecting in multidisciplinary trainings, which can include, for example, pre-service teachers, special education teachers, class teachers that can attend together a course and work together in a reflective and collaborative way. It means that they can reflect together during the process, creating a common activities, and in this way they can be more aware about teamwork dynamics and which skills about teamwork they really need in order to accomplish a common goal. Then the second one could be reflecting in interprofessional teamwork. For example, a team in which there are together teachers and social workers, so professionals with different backgrounds. In this case, it's so important to explicit one's own knowledge that are behind the practices and that influence the daily practices in educational contexts, such as theories, experiences, attitudes, beliefs. And in this case, the members of the group can find differences and commonalities in languages, in working cultures, also in power relations, in roles, in order to better understand the strengths and weaknesses of the members of the group. Then there's another example, which is the supervision, which is not about controlling the work of someone or controlling something, but it's about the support of an external expert, which can accompany the reflection of a group of professionals. For example, to learn how to work to reach common objectives, how to seek new solutions for problems, how to plan better strategies, for example, to communicate better among colleagues. So in this case, the supervisor can collect everyone's point of view and also present some case studies in order to promote problem-solving skills. And in this way, new common reflections from the group are generated to plan new strategies and new objectives.
Okay, so as a member of a multidisciplinary team, where do we start?
As we heard before, we can start to learn how to shift from the, let's say, the I perspective, so the focus only on myself, my task, my job, even my loneliness at work if I feel alone or if I feel that my voice is not heard in my context, and to go to a we perspective, so to perceive ourselves as a part of a group of professionals that work together. Of course, it takes time and it's an ongoing process.
Yes, I'm not trained, but I can seek the strengths of specialist advice and involve families.
Yes, I don't have time, but if we do it now, we will save time later.
Yes, I find it hard sometimes to work with some people, but maybe we can find common ground.
Yes, I don't know how to deal with the situation, but maybe we can engage in collaborative problem solving.